There's an interesting ruling that seems to come at odds with that understanding. A recent court ruling has ruled against foreign nationals in South Africa that don't have permanent residency, ruled against them getting enrolled as legal practitioners. Now, it's an interesting one because the enrollment, I suppose, as a legal practitioner, more than anything else, is a requirement for you to just understand the legal practices and how they play out in South Africa, which, depending on the multinational you work for, you may undertake from a completely different country. So the precursor that one requires permanent residency is a restrictive one. That said, all the more painful, not just for those who might have the cushy environment of working in a multinational company, but for those who are midway through their qualifications and are now realizing that without permanent residency, they will not be able to practice. I'm joined today by Muchengeti Hwacha, who is the director of the Asylum Seeker, Refugee and Migrant Coalition. Muchengeti, thank you so much for joining us this morning. How does this particular ruling impact your associates and members?
Morning, Refilwe. Thank you for the opportunity. This has real dire consequences for representation of non-citizens in the profession. We really have no other redress, because permanent residence, contrary to popular belief, is a very difficult status to obtain. And for the majority of non-citizens, it takes several years to get to. And worse off for people in the position of refugees and asylum seekers, where it can take over a decade. So they're effectively locked out of the legal profession when it comes to admission and enrollment as a legal practitioner.
It comes at odds with even allowing the enrollment of foreign nationals into the program, doesn't it?
It definitely does. We accept these people to be students. We accept these people to be candidate attorneys and pupillage, which is the training required to become a legal practitioner. But at the very last hurdle, we then shut the door on them. And ourselves and a number of applicants approached both the High Court in Free State and in Pretoria and the Constitutional Court to have that issue addressed. But unfortunately, the court has decided against us in this matter.
All right. Look, and specifically when you say there's no further redress, quite importantly, the Constitutional Court, which is of course the highest court in the land, which has found that this part of the Legal Practice Act actually is constitutional, and have found that they've been supported by the Legal Practice Council as well as the Ministers of Home Affairs, Labour, and Trade and Industry and Competition, who have opposed the application by yourselves. So what is the ultimate, because that's quite a few departments that have an impact, and I imagine higher education should probably be a part of this. What is the consequence then of what other legislation may come with respect to qualifying in South Africa, and whether or not, as you rightly say, we can accept students of this nature and of course take their tuition fees?
I think you sort of hit the nail on the head that everybody who is currently a non-citizen who's pursuing an LLB qualification in South Africa with the hopes of someday practicing as a legal practitioner here can essentially forget about that. Now, what that means for the enrollment of non-citizen students in LLB programs across the country, we'll have to wait and see. But if you're a parent and your child wants to study an LLB with the hopes of practicing in this jurisdiction as a non-citizen, they must understand that that is going to be a very difficult and almost near impossible, in our estimation, a very difficult journey to travel. An easy example to give you, Refilwe, is that the Constitutional Court finds that non-citizens can easily apply for an exemption in terms of Section 31 2B of the Immigration Act to gain permanent residence. However, a policy of the Department of Home Affairs specifically excludes people from acquiring permanent residence for the purpose of admission and enrollment as legal practitioners. So it sort of leaves them in limbo that we argued is untenable. But unfortunately, the court has decided against us on that score.
Muchengeti, about how big is this cohort of would-be practicing attorneys?
It's really difficult to estimate, Refilwe, and this is one of the issues that we took issue with, in that whenever the state wants to limit the rights of people on the basis of government policy, they must come to us with the full stats and facts that show that this is the number of people who are affected. They failed to do that in the Bloemfontein High Court. They failed to do that in the Pretoria High Court. They failed to do that at the Constitutional Court. So they rely instead on sort of conjecture and don't come to us with real facts and statistics on the numbers. And only really they can know, because they're the regulatory body of the profession. I'm speaking about the LPC, the Legal Practice Council now.
Is this political?
We would not want to comment on that. We think the judiciary is an independent body that applies its minds to the facts and circumstances that are before it. The climate in the country obviously would have some bearing on anybody who is called to adjudicate. But no, we have full confidence in the impartiality and independence of the judiciary. So I don't want to say that it's political, no.
Fair enough. Great to know you do have that confidence. Muchengeti, we're not quite sure what the next steps are from here. But I think, as I was mentioning earlier, the other policies from different ministries will have to at least harmonize with this, so that one isn't wasting the time of foreign students only to turn around and say they cannot practice. All right.
We feel we need to continue to organize. That's the role of civil society in this country.
Yeah.
And so we will continue to do what we can. But yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss what is something that is very important to us as a community of non-citizens.
Certainly. Muchengeti Hwacha is director of the Asylum Seeker, Refugee and Migrant Coalition. 18 minutes past 6. It's concerning, something that I'm curious to know your thoughts about, listeners, that I don't know. I'm surprised not to see, for example, an Italian bar on here also fighting for this right, or British students. Or are they not coming to study here? Or is it easier for them to get permanent residency? I'd be curious to know your thoughts. 07256715